the Israeli government's continued occupation and brutality towards the Palestinian people and the ongoing apartheid regime that they have built there. Now, this is not my words. These are the words of scholars, of Israeli scholars, of former members of the Israeli government. There's really no way you can argue that that's not the case. And very hard to argue it is an actual democracy when a significant, like literally millions of people under their control with no sovereignty have no say in how they are governed. On top of which, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, have come out because the Netanyahu government is attempting to essentially get rid of an independent judiciary. The judiciary will stay there. It just won't really have the ability to adjudicate in the event that there is a small majority, or just a majority, a basic majority in their Knesset that overrules the Supreme Court. And to be clear, almost definitionally, if you have a ruling, no, not almost definitionally, if you have a ruling coalition, you have 50 plus one votes, period. And so it really makes the Supreme Court there largely irrelevant, particularly in light of a lot of the policies that there is broad consensus in oppressing the Palestinians. Nevertheless, there was a vote on the House floor sponsored by the Republicans in an attempt, I guess, they thought they had some type of wedge issue, I guess, with the Democrats. We'll have Tlaib in a second, but the effort was a resolution saying that Israel is not a racist state. The vote was 412 to 9-1. 9 Democrats voted no. Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Summer Lee, Cori Bush, Ayanna Pressley, Andre Carson, and Delia Ramirez. Jayapal, whose comments inspired this, actually voted yes. It was a resolution introduced by some Texas Republican. Here is Rashida Tlaib on speaking on the House floor yesterday.
I am the only Palestinian American serving in Congress, and I have family members all throughout the West Bank and what many people call the illegally occupied territories. But we're here again, reaffirming Congress' support for apartheid. Policing the words of women of color who dare to speak up about truths, about oppression, is just not what we should be doing here in Congress. And let's just get this record straight here. This is not something that's made up. The United Nations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Israel's own largest human rights organization, B'Tselem, all agree that Israel is an apartheid state. To assert otherwise, Mr. Speaker, in the face of this just body of evidence, is an attempt to deny the reality and to normalize violence of apartheid. This week, we're going to hear consistently that people touting about this is bipartisan support here. Well, don't forget, this body, this Congress, supported the South African apartheid regime, and it was bipartisan as well. But you don't have to take it from me to understand the racism of an apartheid government. Let's take a moment just to hear Israeli government's own politician in their own words. Direct quotes, not mine. Current Prime Minister Netanyahu, on his policies towards Palestinians, quote, beat them up, not once, but repeatedly, beat them up until it's unbearable, and said that Israel must, quote, crush Palestinian hopes for a fully sovereign state. One of the former defense ministers said Palestinians are, quote, beasts, and they are not human. He's talking about people like my grandmother, Mr. Speaker. How about former Justice Minister who said they should go, as should the physical homes in which they raise the snakes. Otherwise, more little snakes will be raised there. How about another former defense minister said, quote, those who are against us, there's nothing to be done. We need to pick and axe them and cut off their heads. Another quote, there is no such thing as Palestinian people.
The lady's time has expired.
At its core. Mr. Speaker, Israel's own president who's
The gentlelady's time has expired. Does the gentleman for New York reserve or yield?
You'll need one more minute.
I give the gentlelady 30 seconds.
Israel's own president, Herzog, who's going to come before Congress tomorrow, has long advocated against interracial marriages. Did you all know that? Do you care? He said on the news segment, look it up. When he came to America, he said, quote, encountered something that I call an actual plague. I saw my friends' children married and coupled with non-Jewish partners. Israel is an apartheid state. The government is deeply problematic in the way that they are proceeding in the structure of oppression. This year, Mr. Speaker, just like I speak up against injustices here in America, this is about speaking up
The gentlelady's
against
time has expired.
violence.
Does the gentleman for New York
Congress must
yield
stop
or reserve?
funding apartheid.
I think it would.
I don't really have much to add to that.
I think the point she makes about, the UN Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, all these people are going to be citing these organizations to make points about human rights in different parts of the country. But for this moment, we're going to act like those don't exist, that the only people making this criticism are the far left wackos.
Yep.
And basically use this occasion to do a giant bipartisan lie on behalf of something that's being increasingly described by even middle of the road human rights organizations as apartheid.
And I would also, again, just reiterate, I mean, I don't have it right in front of me, but it's not hard to find many former Israeli government officials who have described what's going on in Israel as apartheid for over the course of a decade. And it has gotten worse over that time. And I think even for those people who support the existence of Israel, ignoring what's going on there is the greatest threat to Israel's future existence, in my mind. Because, it's not going to work. At one point, this conflict, if that's what you want to call it, or this dynamic has been in existence since the founding of Israel. But let's be clear, this is only 70 years.
Yeah.
75 years.
And the polling among Democrats is really shifting from like very few sympathetic to Palestinians in say 2000 to about almost over 40%
more
now.
Yeah. And at one point or another, Israel is going to become as isolated as South Africa. However, there seemed to be an easier off-ramp for South Africa, or I should say the white minority in South Africa. In this instance, Israel is increasingly led by either religious fundamentalists, total zealots, whose politics are guided by the idea that the Messiah is going to return at one point. And then these sort of, I don't know what you would call them, but ultra, fascistic nationalists. People like Avigdor Lieberman, but more of the current members of the Israeli administration. It's really ugly. So good for Tlaib and those. And let's be clear. How many years out are we from even Tim Kaine boycotting when Netanyahu came?
Yeah.
to the United States. Let's not pretend this hasn't been going on for a while. It's just that there's this sort of, it is very easy to make this about somehow leftists as opposed to just people of conscience.